Hello and welcome to Rewired Mind Counseling Podcast. My name is Esther Obonde and I am the host of this show. Thank you for joining us for today's pioneering podcast on overcoming anxiety and depression using coping mechanisms. This will be achieved by integrating faith-based and clinical approaches and exploring ways that anxiety can be minimized, managed, or eliminated. I will be explaining my approaches in detail in my subsequent podcasts. Hello and welcome to the Wild Mind Counseling and podcast. This is Esther Obonda, and I'm blessed today to have Reverend Erica Dennis Fulton in our midst today. So I am blessed really to have her. So thank you for joining us for today's podcast, episode 7, which is on overcoming anxiety and depression through various applications of coping skills. And this will be achieved via putting together all the various faith-based and clinical approaches, just to help us discover ways. There are numerous ways anxiety can be lessened, managed, or completely eliminated. Reverend Fulton will be sharing her expertise because she has so much to share with us today. She knows so much, and she says, she has acquired so much knowledge on this and experience. So we will tap from her experiences and expertise on the issues of anxiety, depression, and how, trauma all are interconnected. Reverend Erica, Reverend Fulton, are you ready?
Yes.
To go ahead and share all that God has put in your heart?
Yes.
All right. So please, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. As you said, I'm Reverend Erica Denise Fulton. I'm a native Houstonian, grew up in South Park, went to Jesse H. Jones High School. Kind of fast forwarding a little bit, I did my undergrad at the University of St. Thomas, got my bachelor's in theology. My initial thought was chaplaincy, which God had another plan, and I don't, I don't regret any of my journey, any of it. All of it served a purpose. I'm also a widow. I experienced the death of my husband 15 years ago, and that was probably one of the hardest hits. It happened very suddenly. I was very graced that I had a mother and a grandmother, and even my church family who just held space for me. And I had a very good support system to be able to just navigate through that season and that time of my life. So that experience it gives me a level of empathy when I am counseling those and sitting with those who are bereaved, who are maybe dealing with traumatic grief, where there is grief, but it is per se someone died by a homicide or a loved one was hit and killed by a drunk driver. It's grief, but yet there's that element of trauma. And I help people to be able to process that element. I am a proud godmother of 4.
Wow.
I am a new mother. I have a 6-month-old boy who's furry and has 4 legs. My cat, I call him Cinnamon, and his younger brother Buttercup, which they're getting along much better now. Praise God. Prayer really does work.
God, of course.
I have my Master of Arts in Counseling and my Master of Arts in MDiv. A little interesting fact about me. I didn't always drive. I caught buses for 15 plus years. Rain, snow, sunshine, felt well, didn't feel well. Every single day I give God thanks and praise and glory that he gave me the strength to get up out of the bed and get on those bus lines even when my flesh was like, I don't want to get up. I don't feel like getting up. It's cold. I could truly say I've been kept. It really has been the grace of God as I reflect on these years. And that's my educational side. I am a founder of the calmcorner.org. God put that vision in my heart some years ago, and I'm beginning to see the manifestation now. I'm working on my doctoral studies in the area where God has guided me is trauma,
Awesome.
grief, and loss. So the chaplain training at Memorial Herman very much intersects and integrates into the work that I do now. Even, excuse me, as I'm dealing with substance abuse, because there are times when there's some unresolved grief or trauma at the root of some of that. And so, and I'm trying to think of just anything else. I've also been featured in several collaborations, affirmations for a woman on a mission, step into your power, in power, and the lesson in me. And God has graced me to be a part of those beautiful projects. And I want to give a special shout out to Kenya Williams, who has been my big sister, my prayer warrior. We get one another together because we have our moments at times. I just really thank God for the sisterhood, the friendship, the support. Telling me the truth at times, even when my flesh was like, I don't want to hear that. But I am grateful, very much grateful for her. So I just wanted to, and grateful for her company, Grace Girls, who has been a blessing to the Calm Corner. Wonderful admin. She knows her stuff and she can do it in her sleep. That's her anointing, her gifting. So I just had to call her name out. She's called my name out in rooms many times
Oh,
when I wasn't there. So, the word says you give honor where honor is
to
due,
whom honor is
and
due.
honor is
Yes,
due. I
yes,
thank God for her.
that's right.
So,
Yes.
like I said, on my mother's side, I'm an only child. On my dad's side, two brothers, like I say, that I know of, a sister maybe. But and I think that's the gist of who I am. I love to dance. I love to watch funny things. I like comedy shows.
Those are great coping skills.
I like humor. I like to find
Oh,
something funny, especially when I've done a really heavy session and I just need like something to make my brain laugh
yes.
and reset.
Yeah.
And I love yoga. I did yoga for 5 years. And when I did it really did help to calm my nervous system. I had a greater range of motion. There was a lot of mental health benefit to that. My goal is to get back into that when the new year rolls around. You got schooling, papers, and all this other stuff. And I'm happily single till God says it's a
Praise the
different
Lord.
story.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
that's a little bit about being my background, my history, where I've been, and where God is bringing me to, and the evolution He's taking me through, almost like a metamorphosis, like with the butterfly. It starts out as a caterpillar, and then it goes through that stage of becoming a butterfly. So now I'm like in this
Through the
metamorphosis
stages.
stage, where I'm like, "Ooh, God, wait, I'm feeling kind of dizzy. Can we slow down a little bit?" So, and that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you for sharing. You have as I said earlier on, you have so much to share with us. You have so much experiences, and through it all, I think the bottom line is that your faith in God has seen you through, and is still seeing you through,
Yes.
and will continue to see you through. And that's a great lesson for anybody who might be going through some certain kind of, like you mentioned, you are a widow, and you've been able to, navigate, to excel, to go on to study. It all takes the grace of God, to get to where you are now. Otherwise, those are the situations that would have led you to deep depression, but you refused. And somehow I think you mentioned prayer, which is your it's also your coping skill. It does help. It does make
It
changes.
it
Yes,
does.
yes.
And that even plays into anxiety. The wonderful way that God has created our brain in such a in a manner that he we have this neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
which is it's not man made. Um, apologetics, excuse me, is one of my favorite topics on the pastoral counseling side. We were doing like a Bible study, and we were just talking about the various arguments for the existence of God, and I was talking about arguing for God from a point of pattern and design
Yes.
and complexity, and how you can't sit here and tell me that when you look at the complexity of the human body that it created itself. And so we really were delving very deep into that topic. Just the way our blood clots. That's not a man made. That's not man made. Man doesn't have the ability to create that.
Not at
So
all.
it came from somewhere.
Yes.
Cause and effect.
That's
If
right.
there's an effect, there's a cause.
That's
And
right.
that has to do with science. It has nothing to do with faith. So when I dialogue with people who may not have the Bible as an authority, I say, okay, well, let's talk about it from the point of science. I get that's not the place that's not your final reference. Now it's mine, but I get that it's not yours. So let's talk about this from science. And even when you look at science and research, as you said, it points to the efficacy. We say that word we use in the clinical world, which is a fancy way of saying effectiveness of prayer. There is research that supports that prayer, meditating, gratitude, those type of things. Not that it just eradicates anxiety, but it gives you a way to manage it without engaging in behaviors that are going to be counterproductive.
That's right. Yes.
Self-medicating, compulsive behaviors. And when I say addiction, I don't just mean drugs, shopping, relationships. Sex is an addiction for some people. It is a way to numb out
That's right.
from trauma. It's a way to numb out when they get triggered. And they've done it so long that it's just for them it's normal. Everybody does it, which is not, but it's a maladaptive way of coping that in their mind they've convinced themselves it works.
Yes. Yes.
There's a stuck point.
Yeah. You're right. You're right. Right. Thanks for sharing that. Now, what is your personal? This is question time now. What is your personal definition of anxiety and depression as a mental health professional?
Well, what I look at depression is, I believe that depression is anger turned inward. I look at it first from an emotional context. I think there are times when we suppress our emotions and we suppress, especially anger. And I think we do that because there have been times when I think that scripture has been misinterpreted to mean we're just never supposed to be angry with people, or we're not supposed to feel anger with God, or that, oh my gosh, God forbid I tell him I'm angry at him, as if God's gonna crumble if I say that, as if he's gonna just dissipate and disintegrate, and oh my gosh. And it's been my experience when I've had clients who just sit there and they just go, I'm not mad, I'm fine. And I'm like, oh, okay. I know what you're telling me, but your body language and that tone you just use, that's telling me something completely
Something else,
different.
yes.
It sounds like you are angry. I'm just kind of curious who the anger is towards. And they may say, well, I'm really not angry. It's just my mother. She just gets on my nerves and blah, 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 blah. And I go, this person got a whole lot of anger at mama. They just don't want to admit to it. Then I say, well, how is it working for you? And they go, well, it's not working, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. So you're going to drive yourself crazy and give yourself an ulcer or a hernia and deepen your depression because you say you don't want to hurt her feelings. But she has no problem telling you exactly how she feels. And I think when it comes to the issue of anger with God, I think we have been programmed incorrectly to believe that's just somehow blasphemous. And when we don't tell him or we don't even tell people, we start getting resentful. We start doing little passive aggressive things, and we can do it and not even realize I'm being passive aggressive right now because I haven't really been honest with myself or God or that person and how I am angry with him. Excuse me, because of X, Y, and Z. Case in point, and I don't mind being transparent. I came from a family where we swept things under the rug. Nobody really said to the other, I'm angry with you because X, Y, and Z. It was as if something happened and the next day we didn't address it. It was as if nothing happened. And I became conditioned to believing, that's kind of how relationships work. You don't really say that you're angry at the person. You go tell somebody else how you feel about the other person rather than addressing them directly, which we call triangulation. But, just seeing that dynamic in my family, the older I got, the more I realized that wasn't healthy. And at some point I had to break that pattern because I had a tendency to operate like that. And when we're not emotionally honest, or I say when we operate out of emotional dishonesty, we do a disservice to ourselves, God, and the other people around us. Because then we may blow up on people that really have nothing to do with the anger or with the anxiety or with the depression. So I'm always very big on giving my clients the space in therapy to express anger. They may be angry or frustrated at me, and I say, you know what? I give you permission to be angry. It's okay. I haven't been consistent the last week, and I got to be big enough to acknowledge that. And I say okay, because I'll never forget. I was doing a chaplain internship, and something had happened, and I was just mad. I was so angry. And my supervisor said something so powerful to me. She said, I give you permission to be angry with me. She gave me a gift that day that I never really got with my family. And it wasn't from the being malicious. I think it's just we didn't have a firm handle on boundaries and how they worked and what they looked like. And so when she said, I give you permission to be angry with me, that was so freeing. And I kind of flipped that and said many times we don't give ourselves permission to be angry with people or even with God. So to kind of circle back to that question of anxiety and depression, I really think depression, I look at it as anger turned inward. That or the other component of that, I believe, is that depression can stem from not processing loss. That you get loss after loss after loss after loss after loss. And, especially say you're a mother with kids and you're trying to raise kids and then this loss happens and, that gets kind of settled and then the husband gets cancer and he gets okay, and as soon as you're trying to catch your breath and grieve that, then something else happens. You go to the doctor. So now the shoe's on the other foot. And so I do believe that part of that depression can stem from a person being experiencing so many losses till they haven't had time to just sit with it. And it's not necessarily by their own fault. It just, when you're being a mother, you can't say, ooh, I don't feel like being a mama today. You you have to tread your way through. And so I look at depression too, as well as being defined as an emotional state that can be rooted in unresolved losses. There's a good book by Norman Wright. Norman Wright. He is a grief therapist. He's also a Christian, and he writes from both a clinical perspective and a biblical perspective. But he puts Norman Wright.
Okay.
I actually have his book
Okay.
at my house.
Okay. You can send me the details.
Yeah, I'll send you the details because I referenced that book when I work with my grief clients. And I mean, it has exercises that can be applicable to people who may not necessarily be Christians. There's another book, Nehemiah. I'll send it to you. And it just has counseling techniques. And it will tell you, okay, this is appropriate for this particular population. Or you might not want to use it, with this particular population. So I got a wide variety of things in my library.
Please send me.
I have apologetic books. I have counseling books. I'm actually reading a book now called Breaking Rank. This is a white cop who exposes the dark side of the police force, and it's very eye opening. And I find things that I'm like, wow. I listen to a lot of Jane Elliott, who does a lot on race relations. So I always just try to stay relevant, and aware.
That's right.
Of what's going on.
You see, they say there was a study on reading, Alzheimer. Delaying the onset of Alzheimer, or even not letting it happen at all. So they said reading helps. Reading helps. Playing puzzles helps.
Yeah, crossword puzzles,
doing all those to stimulate the brain, keep it going, and not having it being dormant and filled with all junks. So reading is good. Reading is good. And in this day and age, of electronics, it's hard for people to get prints. And start reading. So reading is a very good thing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you're doing it. It helps.
Yeah, and I believe it can help with depression. It can help with anxiety, depending on what you're reading.
Depending on what you're reading. Yeah.
It's like, as a trauma therapist, I don't want to see the news at the end of the day because I've heard it all day. I need to find something funny that helps me to not let my job become my whole world.
That's true.
Because it's a part of, but it's never ever meant to be my whole reality.
Yeah, that's true. Right. Thank you for answering that question. And what do you think are the effects of trauma?
Oh boy, there are so many. One effect, and I can say this clinically and personally, is the inability to sleep. Or sometimes you have people who they sleep too much.
Yeah.
And I watch divorce court a lot. Well, I work with couples too, so that gives me some ideas. But they had one man, I remember he'd had a home invasion. It was a very traumatic situation for him and his wife. But he was shot multiple times. And he'd been having sleep disturbances. It was a year or more. And as I listened to him, I said to myself, that's PTSD all day, every day. Because this went past a month. And for a home invasion and someone to come into your home and shoot you, that violates your sense of safety. I mean, this is your home, the one place you're supposed to be able to be safe. And then it put such a strain on their marriage because the wife got counseling, but the husband was still stuck in his trauma. He didn't know how to navigate through it, and the judge said, look, you need to go get some counseling, some help. He was on heavy pain medication that really wasn't allowing him to function.
And men usually drag their feet when it comes to mental health.
They do.
Yeah, they usually drag their feet.
Yeah, and that, which there's that stigma thing, but whole nother conversation. But there's sleep disturbance, there's hypervigilance, and that actually connects back to anxiety. You can't relax, and you can be in your home, you can be completely safe, but you can't relax. There's an interesting fact I always share with my clients to help normalize when they tell me the trauma responses they've been experiencing. All the parts of our brain turn off when we go to sleep except for one part, our amygdala. That never shuts off. We could be in a dead sleep, and if we hear the door kick in, we're just going to jump up because our amygdala say, get up, there's danger, get up. And when that happens, it completely takes over our body. Nothing else is working. It will say, go hide, go run. So I try to normalize that fight-flight response with my clients and say, your amygdala took over. It did what it was supposed to do. It was keeping you safe. It was keeping you alive. That's nothing to be ashamed of. That's a God-given defense mechanism. I believe he put that in us so that we can know danger.
Yeah, don't forget the fact that in his word, God says we are fearfully and wonderfully made.
So there's some complexity to how he made it. There's some intricacies that are not man-made.
Not man-made.
And they can't be explained by evolution. Because evolution can't account for complexity.
Not at all.
It has no way of it. Because there's still a cause behind evolution.
That's right. Yes.
Science, for every effect, there is a cause. Yeah. There is a cause for evolution. That has to do with the law of science. That has nothing to do with whether you believe in Jesus or not. That's the law of science. And science can be proven. It's factual. It's objective. So you can't shoot that one down. It's true. So that's the way I engage with people who say, I don't believe in the Bible. Okay, well, let's talk about it from this standpoint. I ain't going to spend an hour arguing with you. Hey, you want to believe donkeys are purple? Help yourself. Yeah. Go right ahead. I'm not going to waste time with that. We don't have time to waste. So there's the hypervigilance. There's the intrusive thoughts.
Yeah, intrusive.
There is constantly experiencing negative feelings, shame, guilt, self-blame. Those are what you call the manufactured emotions. They're not coming from the trauma. They're coming from the stuck points. And the stuck points basically are the ways we cope with why that trauma happened to us. It's rooted in a myth, a lie that we've been taught, which again, if you look in John, Jesus says, in this world, you will, not might, you may be. You will have trouble. Yeah. So that cracks the myth that, good things happen to good people. Bad things happen to bad people. But the lie has been so ingrained in us. So we have to find a way to cope. Yeah. We are rational beings. And God gave us that. That's not a bad thing. So we're trying to rationalize, why has such a horrible thing happened to me? And I see this neighbor down the street who's doing any and everything and look like he's just living his best life. Theodicy, which is a whole nother thing, but basically that's kind of like, why would a just God allow evil? Sometimes, those questions come up in a session, and I say, now I can't give you a clear-cut answer on that one.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for listening to episode 7. However, we're going to cut it into 2. We're coming back next week to continue with episode 7. That will be, a continuation. All right. Thank